In today's episode, I'm going to share with you how to straighten and fill dents in this Chevy Colorado. Let's check it out. This Chevy Colorado door got sprung and it messed up the edge of this fender and this door. We got some weird little dents on the bottom of this fender, a dent on the upper part of this fender, and then an upper part of the door. So what we need to do is remove this door and take a better look at it. Okay, so Darius got this door off. We can see that there's some damage under the hinge here and under the hinge here. This door check is bent. It's supposed to be straight, so we may need to replace that. If we look over here at the fender, this dinged up fender edge, we're going to start by straightening that edge. I think most of it's just got some dents here, so we're going to pull out those dents. It's pushed in just a little bit. We're going to pull that out a little bit, straighten up this edge because this edge is damaged here, and then repair this dent right here. What I'm going to do is get the inside all corrected, get it to where it needs to be. We'll fit it up, and then I'll do the body work. So this section here was folded under. It needed to be straightened out. And then when it gets to this section, it goes in just like that. We're going to straighten it out a little bit. And then now we can pull out these dents. I'm going to go in and push them from the inside a little bit as much as I can, knock down the crowns. And then we need to pull this out just a little bit, straighten that out, and then I think we'll be able to fit up the door. Okay, we're going to use this to go right in here and push out this dent. I've got this fender edge straightened out enough that Darius and I can reinstall this driver's door and start working on the gaps. Whenever you're adjusting gaps, you want to work from the back of the vehicle forward. So we need to get this door adjusted properly first. So in order to do that, we need to pop off this fender because we have to loosen up those hinges to get the rear gap perfect. Once we get that perfect, we'll align the fender, make sure everything's going to align properly, and then we'll start with our body work. Because we needed to remove this fender, now we're able to get to the back side of this fender. We're going to straighten up this edge right here that's been damaged. I'll be able to get a spoon behind it and flatten that edge out like it needs to be exactly. Okay, so now we've got this pretty much lined up. We do have to do a little pulling on these dents down here. What I'm going to do is break out the G90E. I'm going to grind this section here. We'll ground it here. We're going to pull out this dent first. It's got a little ridge right here. We'll pull out the center, tap down that ridge. That should really need minor filler, and then we'll start pulling these out. A roll-lock disc with 80 grit sandpaper on it. This is what we're using today. It's the G90E. You weld this tip on, you can slide hammer or pull the dent out. We're going to use this blue layout ink. It's just like a guide coat for metal. It's going to help you find those low areas. Okay, so we're going to run over it with a file, and you can see where the low areas are still. See how it makes the metal shiny? These are the low areas. Now, I don't really think we need to pull out any farther, but we are going to get the dolly behind it just to firm it up as I tap down with this pick. So I'm going to hold it, and I know right here's a little high, right here's a little high. Everywhere it's shining, a little bit high. just grind it clean. We'll put some more dye on it and see how it looks. Here I'm just using the flat spoon and the hammer to tap down those crowns right above that dent. This is ready for filler. We'll V8 with 80 grit, prepare the surface for some filler. I am going to have to pull this fender back off to do that edge. See where we're at here. Very good, just a little bit low right in here. This is a little bit high. Once again, I'll use my spoon behind it. I'll put it on the edge right in here and then I don't want it to be high. I'd rather be just a little bit low. And that's perfect. We'll use 80, feather edge out this paint. Okay, we're ready for some filler. We're going to go ahead and wash it with some sprayway glass cleaner. The upol lightweight gold. I love this body filler. It works great. Really smooth, sands really easy. Pretty reasonably priced. I think it's about $40 a gallon. Check it out if you're interested. I'll leave a link in the description. It doesn't separate in the can. See how well it blocks out? I'm not going to need a lot. We're just going to do a thin coat, fill all the little low areas, and then we'll come back with a skim coat, and that should be all we need. Make sure this is all mixed up. There we go. That's plenty. Okay, so we're going to mix this up, fold it in until it's all one uniform color. You don't want to stir in any air if possible. That causes pinholes, and that will reveal itself when you're sanding the body filler. So the less air you put into it, the better. But we're pressing out the air Now I back taped this gap so we don't get a bunch of filler in between the fender and the door, but we can clean that out after we're done laying in this filler. Now your first coat of filler, you want to press it into the panel so you get good adhesion. Now I'm filling the fender and the door at the same time, so there's a good transition and it's easy to block and level out. Now this particular upol body filler can be applied over bare metal and properly sanded paint. The way to properly sand paint is 80 grit sandpaper, which is what we used. I personally like to apply my filler over the edge of the paint. I don't want an edge of paint and an edge of body filler that I'm going to be primering over. That's two areas where that primer can shrink and cause issue in your finish repair. But make sure you're using a body filler. If you're going to apply it over paint, make sure you check the technical data sheet and make sure that body filler can be applied over properly sanded paint. Block sand on this. I'm using 80 grit sandpaper. We're not going to do this with this block. We'll do this with the round block, but we'll get the flat areas with this small block. See how this panel's flexing when I push on it? You don't want to push too hard when you're blocking. If you have a flexible panel, you're going to get an uneven block. So just keep that in mind. Let the sandpaper do the work. I'm going to get a new piece of sandpaper. This stuff cuts a lot better, the Cubitron, than that Mirka I was using. Yeah, look how fast that's cutting. When you're blocking filler, you want to block in an X or crosshatch pattern. You want to block in all different directions, and you want to keep your block flat against the panel whenever possible. So we started to break through right here. We can see some bare metal. So this area is low. We need a little bit more filler there. So we're going to stop blocking in that area. We'll block this and block the rest of this. Just sanding this edge a little bit. We're going to take this fender off before we finish this body work. Make sure you're paying attention to the contours of the panel. For instance, this fender, at the top part of this fender, it goes in flat to the door, so it's all one flat panel. As the door meets the fender, it contours out. So there's only so much I can block with this flat block. So I'm going to get the edge and do what I can with the flat block, and then I'm going to switch over to some 180 grit sandpaper on a small round block so I can get in that contour and get that straight. So we've broken through. We're going to lay another thin coat of filler over this. Since I have the bodywork on the door and the fender pretty much roughed in, we went ahead and popped this fender off, and now it's time to clean up this edge. So I sanded it, applied a little bit of the upol filler. We sanded that down, and then we applied 2 coats of urethane primer over it, and then we applied 1 coat of the OEM colored E-coat. After the first coat of filler, it came out beautifully, but we have a few little waves that we need to clean up, so I went ahead and taped off the edge of this fender, and I'm going to apply 1 more coat of the upol filler just to clean things up, get them ready for primer. Now I'm just going to repeat the process of blocking out this body filler, running through my progression of sandpaper, starting with 80 grit sandpaper, then blocking it with 180 grit, and then finally 320. My personal preference is to never primer over anything coarser than a 320 grit scratch. Here I'm going to run over the outside edge of this repair with some 180 grit sandpaper, and then I'll sand back over it with 320 grit to remove those 180 grit scratches so we can get this ready for primer. I went ahead and masked this repair off for primer. We washed it with some isopropyl alcohol. Now the primer we're using today is the upol high build primer. This is a 4-to-1 primer. We're using it as like a primer surfacer. So we mixed it 4 parts primer, 1 part activator, and 1 part urethane reducer. I am using a low volume, low pressure paint gun to reduce the amount of overspray. We'll put 2 coats of this urethane 2K primer over this. This will give us enough material to block this out to get it ready for paint. Make sure that you're only applying the primer over properly sanded paint. This gun is the Spray at 33,000. It's a low volume, low pressure paint gun that consumes very little air pressure, so it's great for a small compressor. Now I've got the fluid volume turned to 2 turns out from close. We've got the fan pattern narrowed so we can be precise with where we're applying this primer. And I've got my air pressure set at about 20 psi. Listen, if you want to see how we finish the repairs on this truck, subscribe to the channel now and click that bell so you don't miss anything. This channel is dedicated to helping you build your skills so you can repair or restore your project. I have over 300 videos dedicated to helping you. If you have questions, leave them down in the comments below. I appreciate each and every one of you watching, and we'll see you next time on Garage Noise.